Hi, this is Steve Brown with Jet Bicycle Wheels. Today we want to explore broken spokes on e-bikes fitted with rear hub motors. Here are some recent quotes taken from the Cycling UK forum. A friend of ours recently purchased an Orbea Gain road bike, and after a few weeks the rear wheel broke a spoke. He commented that when he took it into the shop for repair, there was another Gain road in for the same reason. We had an e-bike which after about 1,000 kilometers had broken 6 spokes. After getting new spokes, the wheel was properly rebuilt and is completely true and even tensioned, and no broken spokes since. An electric motor on the rear wheel hub of an e-bike is not much different from a stomper cyclist, and if you add this to a wheel that is built in a less than perfect way, then you have spoke breakages.
Hi, it's Charles from Jet Bicycle Wheels. Today we're taking a look at a Monolith Axiom rear wheel with an e-bike motion 250 watt hub motor, and we're going to check the build quality on this by checking the individual spoke tension, see if there are any significant outliers, and then we're going to retension the wheel and tie and solder the spokes where they cross, because these wheels, not this brand in particular, but because e-bike wheels in general have had some problems with broken spokes. We're going to see if we can stave that off by, both properly tensioning the wheel and then with the tie and solder work to support the spokes. Okay, so first, if we're going to evaluate the tension, we got to know what size spoke we're dealing with. So this is looking like a 2.0 straight gauge spoke. I was surprised to see that they didn't use a thicker gauge spoke, maybe a 235, butted to 2.0 or something like that. This appears to be just a straight gauge 2.0 spoke. The reason I'd prefer to see a butted spoke in there is because the butted spoke would have a bit more strain relief, protect the heads of the spoke from fatigue, and potentially extend the fatigue life of the spokes and the wheel. So now that we know the gauge, we can use our tensiometer to check and see. Because I'm going to retension the wheel, I want to get a sense of what the average tension is, but I also am just curious, where I'm going to see the outlier spokes in terms of tension. So first spoke I'm checking here, 2.3. Let's see what that tells us on our calibration chart for a 2.0 spoke. So that's about 1150 Newton meters. So let's see what the rest of these look like. 2, 246, 235, 223, 248, 265, and 224. So spokes like this, if we were just going to balance the tension, we could borrow some tension from this spoke and add it to this spoke. That would help, but based on what I'm seeing here, I think we're just going to retension the whole thing. So I'm a little concerned about that 1600 Newton meters. That seems like, pretty high tension for the rim to have to withstand over time. You might see a crack start at that eyelet on that spoke. We're going to even everything out, and I think what I see is an average tension of around probably around 1250 Newton meters. So we'll probably build to roughly that, and sort of go from there. Check the tension on the non-drive side, again, kind of see where our outliers are. Because the spoke tension is so much lower on the non-drive side, this is where I generally expect to see the first broken spoke on the wheel system. So what I see here is about 0.96, 1.6, 1.6, 1.49, 1.53, 1.8, 1.8, 1.06, 1.8, that is 1.92, so that's our tightest one so far. 2.14, so this one's way out of range from all the others. And that's next to actually the lowest tension spoke in the system. So our range on these two spokes, go back to our chart here. These are two biggest outliers, which is not unusual to find them next to one another. This is the lowest spoke in the wheel, lowest tension spoke in the wheel system. The tension on this one doesn't even make it onto the chart. It's below 300 Newton meters, right? It's extremely low. So if I were just to, put the disc rotor back on here and the tire and put it back on the bike and just mark this spoke, this is the first spoke I would expect to see break. It's because the tension is so low, the spoke's going to move a lot more. It's going to work harder and faster, and the head's going to break off that spoke. The spoke next to it here is the highest tension spoke that I found in this on the non-drive side of the wheel at 950 Newton meters, which would be a nice number to have, but we shouldn't see that much disparity between the spokes. And I expect what we'll arrive at is probably an average tension of around 600 Newton meters on the non-drive side when we're done. But what we want to avoid is any of these spokes that are well under that. Again, this one, I can't even tell you what the tension is. It's so low that it didn't even make it onto the chart. So we know that's a problem spoke. We had another one that popped pretty low, right around 300 Newton meters. So there are a couple real problem spokes in here that we're going to resolve by retensioning this wheel. Okay, so at this point we've completely retensioned the wheel. When we started off, our drive side tension, the range was between 1,050 Newton meters and 1,600 Newton meters. Now our range is down to between 1,200 and 1,300 Newton meters. And our average is actually pretty close to 1,300 Newton meters. There aren't too many outliers there. So then on our non-drive side, remember our range of tension was less than 300 Newton meters on the low end and a max of 950 Newton meters. So with the adjustments we made, our low outlier was 500 Newton meters, and our top end and pretty close to average is about 550 Newton meters. So that's a huge improvement in the distribution of spoke tension on the wheel, and should make a big difference in terms of the longevity of the spokes. One of the things that made me a little uncomfortable is as I started to detension the wheel, immediately I saw the spoke threads of the spokes exposed at the top edge of the nipple, which suggests to me even at maximum tension the threads aren't anywhere close to being buried in the threads of the nipple. So that causes a stress riser on the spokes, and in particular because of the bracing angle and the entry angle of the spoke and nipple into the rim, I'm concerned that it's going to cause stress on the non-drive side spokes. I wouldn't be surprised down the road to see these non-drive side spokes breaking right at the top edge of the nipple where that stress riser is. If I were to rebuild this wheel, I'd probably rebuild it with something like a DT Alpine 3, thicker at the head, but with a nice butting to provide some strain relief, and then it's 2.0 down at the nipple end. And of course we'd use a longer spoke to get that thread buried down into the nipple. At this stage we're going to wait. We're going to tie and solder this wheel to try and get particularly these non-drive side spokes a little extra support, prevent them from moving quite so much as the wheel goes through its cycle, and extend the fatigue life of these spokes.